Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
Hi there. You've probably already seen videos like Why I Stopped Hating Last of Us 2 or Joel Did Nothing Wrong. Their creators make very good points, but I've noticed that most of them have missed a few key moments, like the importance of the second day in Seattle. I must admit, when I started my playthrough, I instantly fell in love with the game. After around 20 hours, I began hating it. And then, I fell in love with it again. So yeah, in my opinion, The Last of Us 2 is impossible to review. It's a paradox. The game I simultaneously hate and love. And today, I'll try to explain why. Warning. This video is full of spoilers and it is mentioned for people who played both games. It consists of 9 chapters in which we'll take a closer look at a few aspects of the story. That being said, enjoy the show. To recap events, Abby reaches Owen's boat and then that infamous scene happens.
Oh! What are you fucking? I was a goddamn sexy! What the fuck?
After which comes another dream sequence. This time, after reaching the surgery room, instead of her dead father, she sees Yara and Lev hanging from the tree. Suddenly, Abby wakes up and decides to help the kids. And here comes the question.
Why? 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 Why?
Why does she want to help them? What changed her mind? You see, The Last of Us is an interesting case. Most of the time, these games tend to precisely show the player what's going on in the protagonist's heads. The perfect example is Ellie returning from killing Nora. The camera shows her shaking hands, which tells us she's deeply traumatized by what she had done. Of course, there are exceptions, like the ending of the first game. Ellie asks Joel to swear to her that what he said about fireflies is indeed true. Joel assures her, and in response, Ellie simply says,
Okay.
"We've spent enough time with her character to know what she thinks. We know that she knows that Joel is lying. But she decides to believe in it anyway, because she loves him. But when we reach day 2 of Abby's campaign, we don't know what she thinks. We haven't spent with her enough time, and honestly, we don't care about her fate for obvious reasons. We just want to get back to Ellie's storyline ASAP. Yet the game doesn't tell us why she decides to help those kids. Does she regret killing Joel? Even Owen asks her on the boat if he should also find and torture bandits who killed his family members, just like she did with Joel.
Should I go find the people that killed my family?
So if the answer is yes and she regrets it, then why Joel didn't appear in her dream? If Naughty Dog put him there, that would explain a lot of Abby's later motives. Instead, we got almost zero character development, just a few scraps of it. One of them was noticed by Reddit user Lieutenant Skullbugs. I believe this is an implicit comparison to Joel on Abby's end. She doesn't want to be like him, which she is, ironically. She doesn't want to save only her people, but also Yara and Lev. Another Reddit user, Jupijitsu, also has his own explanation of the boat scene. On the boat, Abby is trying to redeem that moment. In this moment of vulnerability, she no longer wants to be Isaac's top scar killer. She just wants to be that innocent girl she used to be, who was still in love with Owen, and who should have stayed with him in that aquarium, but walked away. Still, that's not enough for a solid start to the redemption arc for Abby, which Naughty Dog so desperately tried to implement into the story. Throughout the entire day 1, she didn't change a bit. When she wakes up, she's okay with killing young Scars, and when she reaches the boat, she still wants to go back to Isaac.
I can fix this. I'll talk to Isaac.
All of that could have been easily fixed if, for example, at the beginning of day 2, Abby woke up and began to search through Owen's old boxes. There, she could have found an old photo of her and fireflies helping some strangers. Instead, this entire subplot was left for our own interpretation. Plot device a la Deus Ex Machina. But because she hasn't changed a bit, the most common interpretation will be she again does that for her own selfish reasons. A good redemption arc consists of 4 points: examination of conscience, regret for mistakes, desire to improve, satisfaction, compensation, or penance. It feels like Abby's arc didn't sufficiently emphasize some of these points. I mean, if it wasn't for Owen, she would have probably killed Tommy and Ellie back then. The progression of relationship between Ellie and Joel felt so natural, but Abby and Lev in 24 hours get from "screw those kids" to
"You're my people."
And the game never shows or tells us why. Simple dialogue a la "Hey Lev, my father had the same worldview as you know, would be enough. Instead, most of the time it feels like Abby does that only for show, not because of empathy or seeing the error of her ways.
I wouldn't mind a few minutes with these guys.
But to feel better about herself and avoid karma.
I may fall for your little act with these kids, but I don't.
There's nothing to fall for.
Isaac's top scar killer suddenly had a change of heart? Nothing to do with Owen, right?
A bit like those people who want to have kids only because everyone around them has. Sure, there are some clues why she helps those kids, like
Why did you come back for us?
Guilt.
Of what? You don't owe us anything.
I just needed to lighten the load a bit.
But this doesn't tell us which load she wants to lighten a bit. The load of killing Scars? Killing Joel in front of Ellie? Or the load of what revenge did to her personal life and mental state? Cause the last one is a bit more selfish than the first two, if you ask me. I mean, we play as her. We control her character. We deserve to know. We deserve to have a reason to play as her at that moment. The only reasons we have are going back to playing as Ellie and keeping Forest kids alive. But to fulfill them, we don't need Abby, Ellie, Dina, or even Owen. All of them in Abby's place would do just as fine as her. In the first game, there was a reason why Joel was the main character. He was the one who lost the daughter, not Tess or Tommy, so he was the only one from the pool of characters who could fulfill the duty and save Ellie at the end. For the ending of the part 2 to work, the player has to be either friendly or neutral toward Abby. We followed both perspectives of Ellie and Abby. Now, we just need to know that Abby has grown up, and if she was once again in that same room with Joel, after torturing him, this time she would have spared his life. Yet, we aren't sure about that. She's still a shitty person from our point of view. Just like Tess once said.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
She tries to help some other folks, but she's nearly the same Abby as yesterday. Still a shitty person. Joel saved her life. In return, she shot his legs with a shotgun and proceeded to beat him with the golf club. He's in the critical state and probably won't be able to walk ever again. She has ruined his life, just like he had once ruined hers. She's gotten her revenge, and now it's time to pay her debt for saving her life by sparing his life. And yet, she chooses to kill him.
What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
The problem with The Last of Us Part 2 is the fact that it doesn't feel like a proper Part 2. Do you remember how the adaptations of Deathly Hallows or the Hunger Games Mockingjay were both split into two parts? Yeah. The Last of Us Part 2 feels more like The Last of Us 3 Part 1. There just should be a story set between the first game and the sequel. The original The Last of Us showed us the beginning of a relationship between the two people. The sequel should focus on how it advanced through the years, instead of nearly instantly moving on to the legacy part of that relationship. It's like if Star Wars instantly moved on from New Hope to The Force Awakens. Flashbacks from existing Part 2 are just not enough. Retrospection in which Ellie learns the truth about fireflies feels just so empty. Instead of starting in the hospital's hallway, this section should begin with Ellie having doubts, possibly nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night and running away from Jackson. Run away from Joel should be a playable level to add weight to the whole event. After all, visiting familiar locations from the Salt Lake City would be a nice touch, don't you think? It's so sad that the HBO adaptation wasn't set between the first game and the sequel. It could have shown Ellie searching for traces of other immunes, and further expand her relationship with Joel. Instead, we've got to play as Abby. The problem is, even when I got to know her motives, it still simply wasn't enough for me and many other players to even give a damn about her fate. You see, video games differ from movies and books. The thing that makes a story-driven game great is called immersion. The character controlled by the player is the bridge of sorts that connects our reality with the reality presented in the game. If that bridge is a well-written character with many reasons for us, players, to accompany him or her during the journey, then immersion keeps us diving deeper and deeper into this fictional world, as if it was real. But if the bridge is punctured like Swiss cheese sitting in the middle of the shooting range, oh boy, immersion is lost quite fast. And with Abby, there aren't many reasons for us to accompany her. What's funny, it feels like her lasting 20 minutes playable segment in California had more character development than her entire 10 hours campaign. Ellie is just a better person than her, someone worth rooting for, while Abby is much closer to some ordinary NPC bandit that we simply kill and move on. The boss fight in the theater was probably one of the hardest boss fights I've ever done, and not because it was hard in terms of testing the skills of the player, but because we are playing as the boss. But not like in Doom Eternal, which feels like the final boss simulator. In Doom Eternal, we simultaneously feel like the protagonist and the final boss for the coming waves of demons. But in The Last of Us Part 2, against our own will, we feel more like the final boss that quite literally sweeps the floor with our protagonist. And we really can't do anything about it, except maybe just getting ourselves killed and respawning in the nearest checkpoint, only to watch how the final boss massacres our protagonist all over again. The game forces us to do things, consequences of which we already know, and by this, the game grows our resentment toward it even more. You see, Ellie doesn't take pleasure from violence. But Abby is almost quite the contrary. When Ellie kills Mel and then finds that she was pregnant, she's completely devastated. But when Abby is about to slice Dina's throat, despite Ellie telling her that she's also pregnant, instead of saying something like, "And Mel wasn't?" Abby with no second thought simply replies,
Good. Abby!
During Abby's campaign, the gameplay loop is still addicting. Laura Bailey did an amazing job with voiceover, and some moments, like rushing toward a burning village, or the dangerous walk on the top of the rusty crane, these moments are breathtaking. But still, they would be even more enjoyable if we played as Ellie, because Abby's campaign is just a flashback. Jesse is dead, Tommy is in a critical condition, and Ellie is held at the gunpoint. Simplified, we just want to get over Abby's story as fast as only possible. That's one of the many reasons why her campaign isn't very engaging, despite many astounding moments. Not to mention a few weird instances, like Mel in advanced pregnancy, doing parkour, I'm not an expert of course, but I suspect that jumping on the rope while carrying a child wouldn't be an easy task.
Nah, it'll be fine.
I must admit, I've got mixed feelings about Seraphites, and I really like the motif of cults in post-apocalyptic settings. Their caste system and the way they are isolating themselves on the remains of flooded suburbs are very intriguing, but the game doesn't explain why they are so fanatical. We know that they were formed before the apocalypse. Their prophet was a great warrior who defeated many infected. They shunned Fedra even when they were starving. Lack of food doesn't go well with raising children, so in theory, their community had to grow mainly by convincing outsiders to join. But this theory doesn't make sense if we take into account that when WLF took over, Seraphites were pushed back to suburbs where they began terrorizing its residents, who, in return, decided to join WLF. So yeah, it looks like there aren't many reasons to be a member of Seraphites. Not to mention that WLF is an alternative with Techos. Then why, despite all of these problems, there are still so many Seraphites? Why do they worship their prophet above everything else? We know that she was a great speaker that convinced even some wolves to join her cause, and that her teachings promoted peace.
I wonder if your prophet had any idea what she was starting.
She saved dozens of people in ways no one can explain.
She blew up trucks and killed some soldiers. Not that hard to explain.
Have you read her writings?
Skimmed some.
You'd benefit from it.
Sure.
But were later twisted by elders of the cult.
So, you like this prophet even though her followers want to kill you in her name?
She wouldn't want any of this. Her writings don't have violence in them.
You should tell that to your people.
We weren't stoning or hanging people until after she died. They're taking her words and twisting them. Read the text.
Okay.
But that's all we know about her. In Dying Light the Following, there is a similar cult, with its leader known as Mother. In this case, members of the group are somehow immune to the zombie virus, which gives players a logical explanation of why they have so many followers. I think that Owen's betrayal was the missed opportunity to shed some light on the cult's motives and beliefs. Rather than just letting the old man live and then running away, he could have gotten converted to their religion. That would be an interesting development of his arc. Also, the HBO series starts with the scene where a scientist explains that global warming could cause mutations in mushrooms. The aforementioned prophet could have also preached the same thing, which would explain why her cult didn't want to have anything in common with the remnants of modern society. Instead, Naughty Dog didn't give us a reason behind the prophet's actions. That makes Seraphites not as believable as the rest of the post-apocalyptic Seattle. Joel's death was supposed to be an ignition point for the player who would give in to the primal urge for revenge. Every good shooter needs good gunplay that would reward the player for each headshot, each kill. And boy, The Last of Us Part 2 takes it to a completely different level. Combat and especially finishing enemies in this game is just so oddly satisfying. I think that it shows that there is something dark inside every one of us, that there is a switch which changes our perception of others, from human beings to bags of walking meat. But Part 2 has a few problems with its theme of revenge. The writer's intention was for us to give in to the thirst for revenge and later, in Abby's campaign, regret that choice. But the problem is, there was no choice in the first place. Sometimes, wounded enemies, instead of dying, beg for mercy. But just when we stop aiming at them, they instantly grab their weapons back. And they do this always. They will never try to run away like in old Assassin's Creed games. Our choice was to spare their lives. Don't give in to the revenge this time. But the game doesn't let us. And later tries to tell us that we are baddies because of this.
Hands. Are we the baddies?
To be fair, The Last of Us Part 2 isn't the only example. In the Plague Tale Innocence, there's a moment when we have to use a living pig as bait for hungry rats. The game informs us that we have to use a sling to extinguish lights, and well, rats will do the rest. But what's interesting, forced auto-aim won't allow us to directly kill the pig. I mean, in Fury, we can just kill the pig from a safe distance to spare her suffering and then simply extinguish the lights. Rats won't mind, I guess. But the game itself will. Instead, after watching this horrible scene play out, our little brother gets mad at the protagonist for letting this pig die in such a horrible way.
We have no choice, Hugo. We have to get the rats away.
It's horrible. You're just like all the others.
I mean, we could have just let her die somewhat peacefully, but the game didn't allow us to do so, and then punishes us for this. There's this scene in Spec Ops: The Line when our ally is getting hanged by the angry crowd. Suddenly, mad people start rushing toward us. When this happened to me in my playthrough, I simply started shooting above their heads, which scared them away. No casualties in civilians. What's interesting, the game doesn't tell you. Shoot in the air, and as I later noticed, some players did the same, but many others in that moment opened fire toward those angry civilians, killing some in the process. But there was a choice. The game itself didn't tell you that there is a choice, of course, but it didn't reload the checkpoint when you kill the civilians, or maybe, just like me, came up with the idea to simply scare them away. The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't do that. When the scripted scene launches, you have to kill a dog that's rushing toward you. Then, when playing as Abby, the game forces you to play with the same dog, so you will feel pity about the choice you didn't even make. And okay, that would actually work out, if only the tone of the narration would go hand in hand with emotions of the player. You see, it looks like that Naughty Dog thought that players will start to have doubts about their thirst for revenge when they will kill pregnant Mel, and later, when they spend some time with Abby, they will slowly start to change their minds and begin regretting their actions. So by the end of her campaign, their thirst for revenge will be completely gone. But this doesn't work, because I suspect that most of the players started to have doubts just after killing Nora, while seeing the worsening mental state of Ellie and her shaking hands. You see, we spent quite some time playing as Joel in the first game, and we know what he would want. He would want Ellie to have a happy, normal life, and not dying in this hellhole, killing some shitty people. Because Ellie isn't shitty, she has so much to offer to the rest of the world, so much that could help rebuild the civilization. And we know that if Joel could ask the player for one thing, that thing would be, get my daughter out of this stupid hellhole.
No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
And so by the moment when Jesse and Ellie split up, our thirst for revenge is long gone. And so playing with dogs as Abby, integrating with her friends, it doesn't work. There's no need for changing our minds, cause we don't want to hunt Abby anymore. We simply don't care about her anymore. We just want to take Ellie, Tommy and Dina far from here, ASAP. Cause people from Jackson are better people than wolves or scars. They tend to help outsiders and try rebuilding the civilization. They don't put their resources into torturing forest cultists and waging pointless wars. So no, we don't care about Abby's friends. Maybe except Owen, cause he tried to prevent Joel's death. But about the rest, yeah, not to mention that they are actually bunch of idiots that doesn't understand that if they will attack a person aiming at them, they will probably freaking die.
Yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved.
Fucking
You don't say. You don't say. You don't say.
Okay, finally, we've reached the end of the broken part. Now it's time for the masterpiece component. Before I talk about what's good in the story, first I wanna briefly mention the gameplay itself. I think that there is no better portrayal of the apocalypse than the one presented in The Last of Us. Cityscapes consumed by nature, sounds of waterfalls from broken pipes that were once part of the sewerage system, abandoned houses with kettles left on gas, not to mention that amazing background sounds of banjo and guitar. Tense scenes with Rat King or that moment when Dina nervously aims at the clicker standing just centimeters from her face. These are just a few examples of the masterclass in direction. Let's add to this amazing gunplay, satisfying progression system, pseudo-open world sections of the game, believable puzzles and collectibles, as well as great stealth mechanics with that cinematic audio cue when being detected, instead of those annoying arrows, known from Ubisoft games. As one YouTube user said, this is not a game that you play, you live it, you feel it. So yeah, even if the game had no story at all, I think most of us can agree that the world and gameplay would be still enough to somewhat call Part 2 a true masterpiece. Have you ever wondered what's the meaning behind the title The Last of Us? Who are these us? I think YouTuber Arthur really nailed it in his video essay. These us are the people born before in-game 2013. Joel and Tommy belong to this group, but Ellie doesn't. She was born after the apocalypse. She's the new generation, which task is to rebuild this world. So, The Last of Us franchise is about the legacy of modern society, legacy of people that live within it, legacy of Joel. And Ellie is the legacy of Joel. He taught her everything he knew, how to survive and improvise in this dangerous world, but he also instructed her to be better than him, to avoid mistakes of modern society, of the modern world, mistakes which led to its collapse, to appreciate these small worlds that are everything to us. Cause you see, it was never about saving the world on the outside. Even if Fireflies were able to make a vaccine in that poorly equipped hospital, they probably would have kept it for themselves either way. If they were immune, that would allow them to weaponize spores of Cordyceps against Fedra. Cause in the world of The Last of Us, there is no society to give vaccines to. There are only loners and a bunch of factions fighting with each other. The winner is the one who preserves. This is the world of The Last of Us. What's really worth noting, Jackson follows the other route. It isn't interested in fighting with the rest. That's why it has a great chance of preserving. In modern society, we are constantly connected with the rest of the world via the internet and social media. Because of this, we often forget about the small worlds around us. These small worlds are the ones that truly matter. After all, they contain our homes, hobbies, beliefs, and people we truly care for. Sarah was that small world for Joel. She was the whole world to him. Then we all know what happened. And so eventually, Ellie became the whole world for Joel. So in the end, Joel actually saved the world. But not that broken one on the outside. He saved the world that truly mattered to him. He saved Ellie. And then he passed to her the importance of these small worlds. So one of the main reasons why I consider The Last of Us 2 to be a masterpiece is because we got to witness Ellie continuing Joel's legacy. She isn't a 14-year-old sidekick anymore. Now she's the one kicking ass, just like Joel taught her. There is this moment during the boss fight with Abby when Ellie hides and we can hear her crafting something deadly in the shadows.
The hell is she doing?
I couldn't help myself but smile and think, yeah, that's my girl. So yep, to summarize, it's a great experience for a big fan of the first game to play as now a fully grown Ellie and witness how she has changed through all these years. It's good to witness that she found love and friendship despite everything she has been through. Her own small world. Chit-chats during a ride through the sea of grass.
Sounds lonely.
Only if you're doing it alone.
So are we gonna, like, raise sheep and milk cows?
Are you making fun of me?
No.
Dina offering Ellie her own mask.
We can share mine.
Visiting the museum with Joel.
Look at me! I'm on a motherfucking dinosaur!
Seeing that Tommy survived an encounter with Abby. All of these are great moments that many of us will remember forever. So now we've come to the ending of the game. Ellie reaches Abby and Love at the brink of death, frees them, and then both women fight. Ellie loses finger, has a flashback with Joel, and finally lets Abby and Lev go. Many interpret this scene as a breakage of the cycle of revenge. By not killing Abby, Ellie assures that Lev won't seek vengeance on her or Dina. Of course, Ellie could have also go full psycho and finish both, Abby and her companion. But this isn't in her style, of course. There's also a path where Ellie could kill Abby, take Lev with her to Jackson, and come up with a lie about what happened on the shore. But that also would be a risky move, as Lev already bonded with Abby and still could seek revenge if ever found out what really happened. But, in my opinion, Ellie didn't kill Abby because of the cycle of revenge. You see, when the player frees Abby, she instantly rushes toward Love, then takes the kid and carries toward the boat, just like Joel carried the unconscious Ellie through the hospital in the original game. Ellie of course sees it all. So yeah, I think that under different circumstances in which Abby and Ellie would fight completely alone, in these circumstances Ellie would probably take her revenge and kill Abby, but Lev's presence influences her choice. Cause circumstances matter. It's easier to kill armed person than unarmed one, and who, with the right mind, would kill a mother in the presence of her child. Ellie initially succumbs to revenge once again, and then, when she wrestles with Abby, the memory of Joel suddenly flashes in her head. The whole scene, when Ellie drowns Abby, kinda reminds me of that moment from the prequel when Joel gets impaled in the stomach in front of Ellie. Then he loses consciousness with scared Ellie not knowing if he's even still alive. I think when drowning Abby, Ellie must have remembered that horrible fear of uncertainty, which she felt when Joel fell unconscious from the horse. So in my opinion, Ellie lets Abby live because of Lev. She didn't want that kid to wake up on the shore and feel just like she did many years ago. Abby was a shitty person, but Lev isn't. Lev is still just a kid who needs someone, just like Ellie needed Joel in the first game, willy-nilly. Now Abby is for Lev, the same figure Joel was for Ellie. Not to mention that Lev was the one who saved Dina's life, so Ellie also has depth here. And this makes Ellie far better person than Abby. Abby had a debt to Joel for saving her life, just like Ellie owed Lev for saving Dina. But only Ellie was the one willing to repay, from her own will. And that's what Joel wanted her to be better than the shitty people who destroyed this world, because this is the only way people can rebuild this world, to be better than their predecessors. And this shows that Joel was indeed right all along. Ellie had, and still has, much more to offer to the world just to simply die on the operating table in some hellhole, so one faction can have a slight advantage over the rest. I must admit, at this point, I wasn't sure if I should hate this game or love it. And then, something magical happened. One scene left for the very end. This one flashback with Joel, to whoever wrote it. Thank you. You probably don't know it, but you saved the game for many of us. Throughout the entire game, we were furious that Ellie didn't have a chance to say a proper goodbye to Joel. And trust me, it's one of the worst feelings in the world if you didn't have a chance to say goodbye. And I think that Ellie also thought the same throughout the entire game. But there, on the farm, I think she came to understand that she actually did say goodbye. In the flashback, Ellie comes to Joel and she explains that she was supposed to die in that hospital, that this was her purpose. You see, Ellie was born after the apocalypse. People like her probably see past civilization as some kind of utopia in which life had meaning, whenever now it's only about survival. That's why she thinks that instead of living this meaningless life, she could have sacrificed herself and by this given her life meaning, while simultaneously restoring the same meaning to the lives of others. But Joel knows that this couldn't be further from the truth, that life before the apocalypse wasn't so different, maybe except for bloodthirsty monsters all over the globe. Joel knew that what truly matters in life are those small worlds I've mentioned before. I think that during the dance with Dina, it finally came to Ellie what Joel has given her. He has given her a small world, and by this, he has given her meaning in her life.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts, I've no need for any more. 'Cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me.
And now comes probably the most beautiful moment in the entire game. The proper goodbye. After a moment of silence, Ellie finally says, "I don't think I can ever forgive you for that, but I would like to try." Ellie's voice and the look on her face tells us everything we need to know. She doesn't even need to try, cause deep inside her heart, she has already forgiven him a long time ago. Back then, at the end of the first game, when she simply replied,
Okay.
Joel has spent with Ellie enough time to know her inside out. He knows that she's stubborn and proud, so she doesn't want to give him that satisfaction. But at that moment, when Ellie says, "I would like to try," he knows that Ellie has forgiven him completely. He knows that she loves him, and nothing will ever change that. And so they say, "See ya around," and the flashback ends. and so does The Last of Us Part 2. A game in which even its flaws have their own unique charm. The broken masterpiece. Before I end this video, I would like to say thank you if you reached this part. I also would like to ask you for a favor and like this video if you've enjoyed it. This is a relatively new channel and that would greatly help in gaining more exposition. If you want more videos like this, also hit subscribe button and don't forget to write in the comments your thoughts on the ups and downs of part 2. And also what would you like to see in potential part 3 of the franchise. Once again, thanks for watching, see ya next time.